Hello again for our last field trip in spring 2020, our virtual field trip. We're going to start out at Independence Trail, which is normally the last field trip in this class, which is on the South Fork of the Yuba River. I highly recommend going to it next spring, assuming we're all getting out and about then. So it's about 5.5 miles north of Nevada City. You have this wonderful trail. You can go two different directions, and at one point, although a lot of this has been degraded, you can at least go up on this part of this sort of river access, but some of it is not accessible anymore because it's been falling apart. In any case, this first plant I'm showing you, I'm not having you learn. I left it on the list in case later this summer you want to look at some things. It's the California pink, Silene laciniata, subspecies californica, but I will not ask you about it on the final. This is in the pink family, the Caryophyllaceae, which we normally learn, and it's called the pink family not because of the color of the flowers, but because the petals are usually cut in like someone used pinking shears on them. Some of you may know what pinking shears are. Anyway, very beautiful, so I thought I wanted to leave that in here. Likewise, I didn't even leave this on your list, but this beautiful sedum we often look at there. But we're going to start with a couple more species in a genus and a family you know already. So we're going to start with the Rhamnaceae, and we're looking at two new species of Ceanothus. This is actually not from Independence Trail. This is actually from Cold Canyon, which is over by Lake Berryessa, but it's the same plant. We're going to start with buckbrush, Ceanothus cuneatus. Now, buckbrush is one of these plants that has opposite leaves, mostly, although some of them are clustered. But you can see here this branch coming out here and this branch coming out here. These would have been from the axils of leaves. So again, the branching pattern matches the leaf arrangement. Now, I think I mentioned this to you before, but if not, I'm mentioning it now, that in Ceanothus, the plants that have opposite leaves also have leaves that have one rib from the base, the main vein going from the base. They're going to have one. Later, we'll see a species that has alternately arranged leaves, and there they generally have three ribs coming from the base, and we'll see that in just a moment. But first, opposite leaves, and so we have one rib, one main vein in the leaves. Now, buckbrush is an erect plant. Sometimes it forms mounds. It can be up to 3 meters tall, but you know that's pretty extreme. It's usually a little bit smaller than that. And the cuneatus part is for the leaf shape. The cune part refers to wedge-like, so you see that base of the leaf that's fairly wedge-like. And there is actually a variety of different leaf shapes. If you look in the Egyptian, you'll see they'll have 3 different leaves. Some are kind of elongate like this, some are a little bit wider, and I'm really used to seeing this form where they have a sort of a notched end to this. Now, these are very young leaves. You can see the hairs on them, but they're sort of bilobed at the end or notched at the end. So quite variable in leaf shape. Now, in the genus Ceanothus, you might remember that we can have 2 types of stipules. We can have stipules that are thin and leaf-like, or stipules that are corky. These are corky, and I must admit I was floored when I took this picture. This is in our yard. These are very young leaves, and these are young stipules. You do not normally see this flaming orange color. It was also a little bit maybe backlit or very sunny, because normally when they get older and the leaves get bigger, these turn brown. But these are the corky stipules. So what happens is the tip part will fall off, but you're usually left with the base of these stipules that is corky. Definitely not leaf-like. Now, this is a pretty common plant in chaparral, the lower elevation foothills, both in coast and in the Sierra. And it has these lovely white flowers, kind of an umbel-like inflorescence, not really a true umbel. In ceanothus, you generally have clusters of flowers and they're arranged in some fashion. This one is most like an umbel. Let's see. Okay, now before going on to the next species, I just have a couple more pictures of this. This is buckbrush. Okay, I just had to show you a couple of pictures of a plant we've already covered, which is the California buckeye, Aesculus californica. You may remember that it has opposite palmately compound leaves, and it's a big shrub to tree. Well, the one in our yard is starting to flower, and you really should see the flowers because there's these beautiful big inflorescences. These are about 6 to 8 inches long, and what's kind of funny, a lot of times the first flower opens, it's thought that there's a flush of hormones called auxin that goes to the tip, and then you start opening the rest of the flowers from the bottom. In any case, the flowers are beautiful. Look at the little anthers there, and I just wanted to show you that since we've already had this plant. Doesn't mean it's back on the list for the final, though. Okay, now let's go a little higher in elevation. Okay, so that first ceanothus was chaparral, mostly lower elevation. This next one overlaps in elevation, but goes higher into the mountains. And you often see this if you're driving on 80 or 50. These look like white fingers sticking out into the roadway, and these bushes that are taller and waving around quite a bit because their twigs are not that stiff. You're probably seeing deer brush, Ceanothus integerimus, so deer brush. And notice this inflorescence is not like an umbel. And they say it's panicle-like, but I just think of it, as being elongate. And there's one of these clusters of flowers I was talking about. The flower color can vary. You can see this from white to blue, maybe even pinkish. Okay, but this is one of the ceanothi, plural ceanothus, that has alternate leaves. And because of that, the alternate leaves are generally 1 to 3 ribbed from base. I know I said 3 ribbed, but see this main rib here? And then you have 2 more that are sort of arching from the base. That's very typical of these alternate thinner. These are deciduous leaves. I don't know if I mentioned that for the first species. Buckbrush is evergreen. This one is deciduous. Sorry about that. Getting to the end of the semester and I'm not practicing these as much as before. Okay, so deer brush, a little bit taller, up to 4 meters, shrub, very flexible twigs. Leaves are alternate and deciduous. The stipules are not corky then. I don't have a good picture of them, but. And the leaf blade is thin. It can be up to 8 centimeters. I've never seen it that long. It's more like 2 centimeters in length. And let's see, anything else? This one goes up to about 2,100 meters, and it can be in the Sierra and the Cascade Range and all kinds of nice places. So now on to 2 iris species. So of course we're in the Iridaceae, the iris family. The first we're going to talk about is Iris macrosiphon. Bowl-tubed iris, has other common names. Before I get to that, I just want to remind you that we have an inferior ovary in irises, and we have 3 sepals. This is a sepal. There's another one out there, another one out there. Remember, right over the sepals, you have these petaloid styles, so 3 separate styles. And I don't know if you can see on this one, they're often 2-lobed at the tip. That's called the crest. So if we're talking about the length of these lobes, they're talking about the crest. And remember the stigma, I'll show you well, let me just show you right now. If you take that petaloid style and flip it over, you can see the 2 lobes, 1, 2. Right there is the stigma, really. And sometimes a few species have that 2-lobe too. Both of these species actually have this triangular base. And you can see there's the stamen that was between that and the sepal. Where are the petals? Well, they're coming out alternate with the sepals. In any case, let's go back to this and talked about Iris macrosiphon. This is the lower elevation of the 2 irises, but they definitely overlap. Usually you have one or two flowers open in inflorescence. The color can vary quite a lot in these. You can have real yellowy white, we can have purpley blue, but the veins actually in both of these are usually darker. So on first glance, they look very similar. These crests are about 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters long, but the most important thing, we'll keep going through here, is, there you can see the leaves that are equitant in the iris family. But the most important thing in Iris macrosiphon is a long tube. Okay, so I was about to say the most important thing about this, and it's this long tube, because another name for this is long tube iris, but this is a tube above the inferior ovary. The ovary's down in here, and irises, and actually other members of the iris family, generally have some kind of a perianth tube above that. This one carries that to the extreme. So this is all, even including this, the perianth tube. And so it can be anywhere from about 3.5 to 6.5 centimeters long. Now you get a little confused because the pictures in Peterson show this as really abruptly inflated. This is, but they show it even more so. That's not as characteristic as the long tube, this long perianth tube. Most irises don't have that. If we look at Iris hartwegii, okay, again, we're going up in elevation. They overlap. The previous iris was more in oak and pine forests. This one, as we're going up in elevation, is more in pine forests. This is in Fleming Meadows off Highway 50 and the Mormon Immigrant Trail. There's a place where you can go and look around. Anyway, so it is a bit high, quite a bit higher elevation actually. But you look at the color, it's like, oh, well, it's pretty similar. This one doesn't have any of the blue, but again, the color varies. Notice the large, some darker veins, and notice the two lobes in the crest. But if you look at the ovary is right there. There's the inferior ovary, and the hypanthium, sorry, not hypanthium, there's no hypanthium. The perianth tube is quite short. It's only about 1 centimeter, maybe you can get up to 2 centimeters long, but nothing like macrosiphon. So that's the biggest difference. Okay. And I just want to bring back this species, Calochortus monophyllus, which you've seen before, the yellow star tulip. A beautiful Calochortus with the open bowl-shaped flowers. That is not a big flower. That's only about 1 to 2, maybe 2 centimeters wide. Sepals and the hairy petals, and I'm getting zoom bombed by my cat, so sorry. And monophyllus, it has one basal leaf, although it can have a few leaves on the stem, up to 3. Here's just another picture where the bud is not quite as open. And what's really cool about these, I don't have any pictures of the fruit, but the fruit is nodding, and it's a capsule that's winged, so it's going to have these extensions on the sides of the capsule. Okay, we are going to continue on up, and I think I'll have to go to my next video, so I'll end this one here.